Hello and welcome to the Bothering Strangers podcast. My guest today is rapper Westside Gravy. You can stream all his music on every platform. His stage name is Westside Gravy. However, his real name is Noah Shuvatinsky. Noah, how are you doing?
I'm doing super well. How about you?
I'm good. This is actually you're the first podcast I've done. This episode is the first one I've done with somebody outside of the United States.
Oh, look at that. Westside
Yeah,
Worldwide.
you're a little trailblazer, man. Yes, because you're coming because Noah is coming to me from Hadera, Israel, which is, as you said, it in between Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, okay, thanks, man. How's it going over there in Israel?
It's good. I mean, it's kind of crazy right now, actually, as far as lockdown and COVID-19 and in general, the handling of it. But I mean, hanging in here, I think a lot of people are trying to do their best to make sure that they can protect each other, protect themselves, and continue living.
Yeah, I've been reading. Obviously, Israel did really well with the pandemic, like in March and April. But then I kind of like it seems like a lot of countries right now and many parts of the United States they kind of lapsed again.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what happened? Now they're adjusting to that.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I didn't actually get here till July, but I remember looking at the news and seeing that cases were super low. They really locked down and did a really great job with that early on. And then I think cases started to rise towards the end of the summer. And then there's a lot of like delays between the government deciding exactly what they were going to close, how they were going to institute a lockdown, and then I mean now we are where we are, where we're in a lockdown right now, getting through these high holidays, and we'll have to wait and see exactly when it's going to stop.
I feel like because this is like happening everywhere. Honestly, is like a lot of places are now spiking. I feel like the problem is like that people have been inside for so long. They're just like, okay, I have to go outside, and like even with being careful and everything, you still slip up, you still make mistakes. You can still get COVID even if you do all the right stuff. And it's like this comedian D.L. Hewley said he said it perfectly. He said, "Coronavirus preys on the selfish." Because like, if
You know,
you're a little more selfish and you go outside, which happens, you're just increasing your chances.
no, that's a way to put it. I think that definitely it has to do with that. And then on top of that, I think people opened up really fast after the first lockdown, and then that just let things spike because people are thinking if everything is open and I've been sitting inside for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then I'm gonna take this opportunity to get outside, and then it's a shame.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, in California, we were doing well, and then well, you were probably in California then too, and then we decided to open up, and oh, bad move.
It was bad.
Oh yeah, like only Gavin Newsom, the governor, only opened stuff up for like 2 weeks,
Oh yeah,
and that was all it took for California to go from being one of the best states in regards to coronavirus to the worst or one of the worst.
it's a shame. I remember seeing that in the news. I wasn't in California at that time, but I remember
Mm,
having my friends.
gotcha. Well, you let's just talk about kind of the intersection of your identities here, because you are Jewish, however your mom's black, and of course that if you look at the downside of it, you could say, well, that means anti-Semitism and racism, but I feel like there has to be some positives as well to that. So what positives have you experienced, being both those things?
I mean, to be honest, for me, the positives in my own mind and my own experience definitely outweigh the negatives because just the amount of energy that I put into the people who are around me who definitely highlight the positive side of it. So, me being black, growing up, knowing where my ancestors come from, knowing how much they sacrificed for, and being blessed with all the opportunities I have. And then same being Jewish, being a result of centuries of persecution, but also perseverance and recognizing the fact that I have all these stories to tell and I have all this amazing, rich culture on all sides of my family to share with the world and have like such a supportive family who really gets where I come from. And there's a community of people who have these experiences and have the experience of overcoming adversity and finding the strength in that, I think is amazing.
Well, so your music is very like mission driven, kind of in that every song has some kind of message in it. So message driven. You talk about anti-Semitism and racism, but I feel like a lot of people don't know that there is a racism issue in the Jewish community. So, have you experienced a lot of racism from the Jewish community, or have you experienced more of it from just like the outside world?
I mean, I personally have definitely experienced a lot more just from the outside world in general. I think, I mean, I wouldn't even like compare necessarily like the amounts that I've experienced just from like non-black, non-Jewish people compared to racism I've experienced within the Jewish community. But definitely, I've come into like conflict and had some really strange encounters with people within my community, which definitely can hurt more because I go into a place expecting that I have people who are gonna look out for me because I'm a member of their community, have shared experiences. But at the same time, I would say that a vast majority of it has been positive, and a lot of people right now, it's I'd say helping me be more optimistic, seeing how many people are looking at addressing that issue. And I'd say a lot of that really comes from people being ignorant and closed-minded. So the sort of racism that you get within that I've experienced from other people within the Jewish community has been a lot about people not necessarily even understanding or thinking or being considerate of the fact that there are Jews who are black and Jews who don't share the exact same experiences as them as far as their racial identity and however they self-identify racially. Um, so I think that there definitely are experiences where people make ignorant comments, where people make assumptions and act in exclusionary ways, and sort of make it almost feel like a chore to be part of that community. But I've been really blessed also to be part of amazing communities where I don't feel that way. Like my community at college wasn't like that at all. I was in a Jewish community. I didn't get any sort of questions, pushback at all about also being black. And for me, that was really great. I think that definitely being in college at such a pivotal point in my life and having such a strong community there for me really affected like my own relationship with my faith and my Jewish community going throughout the world, knowing that that's like of something that I'll be able to find and that I was able to find at an important time in my life. So I'm really thankful for that.
So, do you just like in regards like you talk about how a lot of people, and this is I find this is true in the Jewish community, a lot of people don't know that there are black Jews. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go on.
yeah, I was gonna say I think that that's like nail on the head how you phrased it.
Do you find, because I mean the thing is I obviously I'm Jewish, I know there are black Jews, but I've met certain Jews in my life who didn't know it. So do you find like that, like when you tell people, Jewish or not, that you are Jewish, do you find that they're surprised? What kind of reactions do you normally get when that happens?
So I think in America there's a lot of surprise or intrigue, and it could be positive or could negative, or it could be negative. Sometimes people are like, "Oh wow, I learned something new. That's not something that I'd known." Cool. Other people are kind of take that surprise and channel it into disbelief, and I think that's a lot more damaging to have someone be like, "Oh wow, like you're Jewish? No way. How? Explain. Like that doesn't make any sense." So I think that there's two sides to it. I think when it would be better if more people were just aware of it, and there's more education around the Jewish community and the fact of where the Jewish diaspora went to, including places where there are Black Jews. And I think that one step in that is people educating themselves and also not pushing that sort of disbelief onto people who are part of their communities. But I think also in Israel, that's not something I've experienced like ever. I think people are extremely aware that there are Jews of all different races as far as like skin color, and then also being Black Jews and also non-Black Jews and also people who are a shade of brown in between. So I think that that's something that's pretty cool about Israel. But I'd say my main message as far as that is that I've actually thought a lot about and found quite interesting is like, all right, we're Jewish people. Our peoplehood, what we say, the history, the facts, it originates from where I am right now in the Middle East. When I tell people that my dad's Russian and Jewish, I'm Russian Jew, they say, okay, that makes sense. When I tell people that I'm Black and Jewish, it's complete disbelief for a lot of them. So my main question is I'd encourage people to really think, why is it that you think it's possible for Jews, and it was possible for Jews to get from here, where I am right now in Israel, all the way up to Moscow, Russia. But the idea of going a couple hundred or thousand miles to the continent of Africa seems mind-blowing. So I think that's an interesting way I've thought about it.
I've never thought about it like that, but it makes sense though, because it is not that far. So there are obviously you're in Israel. There is a large community of Ethiopian Jews in Israel. Um, do people some people I've like some people I've met in my life do know in America do know about Ethiopian Jews. They are aware that there are black Jews mainly in Israel. Do people in America sometimes when you tell them you're Jewish, they're like, oh, you're Ethiopian? Do you get that question?
Yeah, I've got that a couple times because that is like a huge, very significant and amazing Black Jewish community that exists. So that's kind of what a lot of people go to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like we were talking about before when we got on here, your mom found out she was Jewish like later on in life. So so were you when your mom found out she was Jewish, were you alive at that point?
Um, yeah, I guess so. Like for me, it wasn't even like a huge thing because like in my family, I was always raised Jewish. I wasn't raised with like another tradition.
Right.
um, Jewish traditions were in our like we celebrated Jewish holidays, and a huge part of that was also like my mom educating me and my siblings about Jewish culture and Jewish holidays because she was aware of it. She's part of Jewish communities, and like I was being raised Jewish, so it wasn't really something that was a crazy like oh wow like you weren't Jewish before but now you're Jewish sort of thing.
Right. The thing like let's like we talked about before, I feel like it would be more like the kind of shock and awe of like finding out that you're Jewish. Beyond like what do I do now? It's like, whoa, so I'm also this with this? Like, so now there's like a whole new intersection going on, a whole new identity you have to address.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's kind of part of a lot of black families, Jewish and non-Jewish, within the United States of America in modern days is discovering roots and where people actually came from. Because in addition to like that, also nowadays we have access and the ability to actually trace where in Africa we came from. So it's not even just like, oh, we're finding out. Like we always knew, obviously, that we came from Africa, most
Yeah.
likely Western Africa in some place. But actually having the ability to trace that, I think, is something that a lot of black people in America right now are doing. So I would say it wasn't as much of like a shock or a surprise, just like, oh, cool, look at how that worked out. And it didn't really necessarily change the way I viewed myself or viewed my family. But I think a large part of that is also because we've been like a Jewish family.
Right. No, that makes sense. So let's talk about your rap music. Who would you say your top five like influences are in the rap game?
Okay.
Not
So
not
I would
not
say,
not your favorite, just like who's influenced you the most.
okay. All right, I'm going to think about that because, all right, so I think definitely growing up I listened to a lot of Tupac growing up, a
Old
lot of
school.
old school rap. So yeah, a lot of old school stuff and a lot of West Coast stuff. So my parents played a lot of music around me, and Tupac is definitely there. I really appreciate his ability to tell stories in his music and make situations that sometimes he even wasn't involved in, but make them relatable to a listener. I think that that's something that's really unique. Another old school but also still relevant artist I'd say is E40. I think that his wordplay is super unique.
He's
Um,
super old school.
yeah, like he's been around forever, like forever, and then he's still dropping albums now with like all the current artists.
He's,
So
he's more like one of the OGs of like rap, I would say actually.
yeah, absolutely, and he's ahead of his time always. So
Yep.
I'd say he's definitely someone who's like an influence as far as finding creative ways to tell stories, to describe his environment, and also make songs that are just fun to listen to. Um, Nowadays, I like Schoolboy Q a lot. I think another like West Coast rapper who does a really good job of storytelling. I'm also, I'd say, as far as like influences, I mean, J. Cole is another one of those artists who I think does a really good job telling
The
stories.
ultimate storyteller right there.
Yeah, he does like a really good job of just putting stories in like plain words, but making it creative, you know? And I don't know, I think that's something really unique. And then also this rapper from LA, King Lil G. I think someone I started listening to when I was in like middle school. And again, he carries on that West Coast storytelling tradition. And for me, I actually had a chance to open up for him when I was like 16 years old.
Wow.
So it was really cool because, at the time I was living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this is someone who I'd listened to since I was living in Oceanside in San Diego, and seeing that he had a concert in the area and being able to actually, open up for him at a time when I was taking my music a lot more seriously was super cool. And being able to see him on stage and also like be on stage. That was definitely an influential moment in my career.
Yeah, that's oh man, that sounds incredible. It's like it's I feel that's one of those moments where you're like, oh wow, like so my dream is coming true, and
Definitely.
you're having this like realization as it's happening though. At the same time,
Yeah,
like I'm now realizing with this podcast, like I even only this is a sixth episode. I've had the ability to meet people that did not think I'd be able to meet.
that's dope.
Which one proves that maybe it's not as hard to meet people, but two, it's also like, oh, so it's like they're not as far away from us as we feel like they are.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Did you also have that moment with that rapper where you're like, oh, he's not, he's closer to me than I realize.
I did because like this is someone who I'd listened to from a younger age. When I was like, I mean, I've always been like musical, but now that I was actually taking music seriously, and the chance for me to meet him didn't even come like backstage waiting in a line for something. Like I got there early for sound check, and he just walked in the door, and I said, "Hey, what's up? I'm opening up for you." And he's like, "Hey, what's up? Great to meet you. I'm excited to hear your music." I gave him a CD. He's like, "Dope. I'm gonna listen to this." And then just waiting, like while other people were opening up, there were other artists who were with him and who were featured on albums that I'd been listening to for like a year or two. And then the other artists were just talking to me, and I was like, well, "This is crazy. I was just listening to you, but not talking to me. I was listening to you on a record." So it was a dope experience, and really thinking, "Wow, like
Yeah, I had that moment in the third episode, I guess. This is the sixth, but in the third, I interviewed a comedian who has a small special on Netflix, and it's one of my favorite specials. Like period, just it's only 15 minutes. I just thought it was so funny, and then I'm like, I'm interviewing you right now, and in the moment, I held it together. I held it down, you know. But in my head, I'm like, I'm interviewing you, right? You're having these moments like, oh god, but you can't act starstruck, of course.
yeah, you got to just be like, you know what? I'm here for a reason. Like I also deserve to be here. You agreed to talk to me. I'm
Yeah,
agreeing to talk to you."
I know
In
there's
your mind,
gonna be a moment. I know there's gonna be a guest who I have who's just so big. I don't know when, but there's gonna be a guest where I'm like where I actively get starstruck and it's noticeable.
yeah. I mean, I think it happens to the best of us.
Did they know? Did you hold it together when you were open, like when you were meeting all those rappers, or were you like, nah, I'm just going full fanboy on them?
I mean, I hope I held it together. I was nervous in general because I was getting ready to go on stage at this one venue for the first time, but I had a lot on my mind. But I was at first, I was like, "Yo, I can't." In my mind, I was like, "I can't believe this is happening." But I think I was able to hold it together. I let them know, like, "Yo, I appreciate you. I respect you for what you do for your music. I've been listening to it for a while, and also I'm excited to open up, and I'd love for you to listen to my music." So
Yeah, nice. I I, I,
yeah,
I hope they saw that you were holding it together too.
I hope
Uh,
so. I ended up opening up for him the following year in Philadelphia, and then also in San Diego.
gotcha. Yeah.
So
So now you're best friends.
almost
We're
one
getting
day.
there. We're getting there. So those are what those guys are your top five, like just in terms of influences, right?
Yeah, I'd say as far as influences, either what I listened to growing up or appreciated growing up, or even like influential moments in my career.
Why do you feel like storytelling rap? Like I'm not a big rap fan, but I can tell that storytelling rap is kind of lost. It's not very popular more. Well, and then not like that was the original form of rap, was storytelling. So
Yeah,
what do you think happened that was like we're gonna just go to like mumble rap and other forms?
I mean, I think that for me, my favorite artists are people who are able to like not mumble rap, but people who are able to do both. People who are able to either make a song that's telling a story either just for fun or something that's influential in their life, or also even if they just want to do like a fun song but still be creative about it. I think that that whole creativity aspect holds it all together. And I think that in general, like most quality art takes more time. It definitely takes more investment. And when people are looking at it from a commercial perspective, it's much easier to produce like a mumble rap song. It's much easier to make a simple beat with like I also make beats, so like there are times when I know if I want to make a beat, I can make a beat in like 5 minutes, and I could be like, okay, if I want to not actually invest the time and effort to create something meaningful or creative to me, then I can just copy what the next person's doing, and it's catchy enough that people will listen to it, and a marketing person will be able to be like, you know what, that's something that we can sell, and it's not going to cost us much to actually do it in time or money. So I think that's a huge aspect of it, of why storytelling hip hop has not necessarily been as popular now as it was before. But I think the other part of it is just the pure saturation. So because it's so easy to make like ridiculous songs that aren't necessarily creative, and it doesn't have to be something super deep, but I'm saying that aren't necessarily creative or creating anything new, means so many more people could do it and just flood the market. And if people who are selling it see, okay, this music is selling, so I'm going to sign this artist to be able to make more money. I think that that's sort of the way it works. But I mean, there definitely still are people who are out there and being creative and are being successful with the other type of rap. I just think it's a matter of that takes a lot more investment. So you're not going to have necessarily as many.
But I feel like there's another side to it as well, where like for sure, like what you're saying is right. But then on the flip of that, for someone like you, a storytelling rapper or any storytelling rapper, that means that there's like less supply of it, but still like a similar demand.
Yeah,
So it helps out you and whoever else because just there's less of it, so they're more happy to see it.
yeah, that's true. It's because of that oversaturation that if people are able to actually find someone that exemplifies what they're looking for in an artist as far as storytelling or creativity in general, then there's definitely that level of appreciation because it seems more, like, yeah, like as you said, like there's less supply of it, but still that demand for it.
Who would you say are who are the not your favorite rappers? Who do you think are the best rappers? Period. Like through the history of rap. This is a tough one. You don't even need to
Yeah.
say it in order. You can just say top five. Like just
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm not good enough to put it in order, but I personally I say E40's up there. I think he's creative, is always ahead of his time, has some
40. Write it
crazy
down.
flow. Eminem, like I don't think you could deny Eminem's one of the top rappers.
It would be controversial if you hadn't said Eminem.
Yeah, I think that'd be a problem. I put Tupac there too because of everything that I said. I think his storytelling ability, as far as hip hop, that's something that's not matched. I would say, and I need to. This also changes for me because I think about it. I'd put Rakim up there just based on influence, like classic.
It's always gonna change. I feel like because like even everyone goes through their phases of what they like, who they like.
Yeah,
What do you think before you get to the other two? I feel like we never saw Tupac's prime of rapping because he was like
yeah.
26, 27 when he died.
So yeah,
Like his ceiling, I'm convinced it was never hit.
yeah. I don't even know what it would be because like I listen to like Tupac albums and I have a playlist of like all kinds of rap music, and then I realize, wow, this is like from a bunch of different albums, and everything sounds right. Like it sounds like okay, like he definitely was doing his best at that moment, and it sounds amazing. So who knows, like what the next albums that he actually would have been able to create would have sounded like, as far as skill, it would have sounded right. I think so.
Who knows? Does Nas go on that list?
Man, this is like so hard for me to think. I think that as far as like lyrical ability, there's so many people who I'm like, man, I'd have to put them on the list. But now that I'm thinking about just five, I also have to go with like people who I've been listening to. Like I put Rakim on the list. I think he was another person who's super ahead of his
These
time.
are these are all old school guys. Well, Eminem not so much, but Rakim is.
Rakim's definitely old school, and I think that's why like there's another person. I listen to Rakim, and I'm like, if this record came out today, like you can hear, okay, maybe some of the samples that they're using sound like they came from that time, but like his flow is still like something that I would be listening to today. That I think a rapper today would create something like that.
Yeah, that's I think that's like the difference, and this might have to do with technology for all we know, because like back in the '90s they just weren't working with stuff that's as high tech as now. But it's like the flows of all these like basically OGs of rap back in the '90s was so much better, and the beat was so much simpler at the same time.
Yeah,
Like now they're like pretty intricate, I find.
yeah, I think definitely they had their ways back then, depending on who of combining different sounds. Even if there's so many different sounds in a certain way that like makes the beat sounds all united, like all together. And I think there's something special about that because you could listen to it years and years and years in a row, and then years later pick up like a little sound, but that you didn't necessarily notice at the outset. But also now, like the ability to create beats with all kinds of different sounds and make it so intricate is, I think, is a blessing. Oh, there, you know what? All right, so I said E40, Eminem, Tupac, Rakim. I'm gonna go with a group for the
Okay.
last people who I think
All
are the
right.
best. I'm gonna put Cypress Hill on there.
Who?
Cypress Hill, because we're talking
Oh,
about
Cypress
beats
Hill.
as
Yeah,
well.
okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I
all
think that
everyone here. Well, with the exception of Eminem, everyone here is old school.
I mean, I definitely think there's people now who like you who would fit on that list, and I wouldn't argue with it. And maybe in 5 years, I'd also say that I think they're the best. But it's so
Um,
much easier for me now to listen, like look at people who are old school who I've been listening to, and be like, okay, yeah, that person obviously has it because there's more material for me to listen to.
yeah, the only thing that might be different from those guys is that maybe what they talk about isn't necessarily relatable to today because it might have been just
Yeah,
something happening in the '90s. But you can't knock the flow though.
yeah, and it's like a window into what was happening then.
Yeah. Also, I feel like, and I would love to know what your thoughts on this are too, that a lot of rappers today they fill in space with cursing, and I have nothing against cursing in rap music, but I'm just one to say that there's a time and a place for it.
Yeah,
A lot of rappers are just filling in space, while none of these guys, and Eminem still doesn't do this. They may curse, but it's like they put it in the right spots.
yeah. It makes it sound more like there's actually meaning behind why they decided to write that word or just rap that word. They're not
Yeah,
writing.
that's kind of so that's just one of those things I've found consistently amongst like a lot of the young rappers now, like the guys who are like around your like 19, 20, 21. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not. If I listen to rap, I'm almost only gonna listen to like the guys like that you mentioned, like from that era. Because
yeah.
they're
I mean, I think that for me, I like listening and seeing what else is going on as far as rap music. Listening to some rappers from other places too. I listen to some rappers from London, from Israel, and just trying to figure out what exactly is going on with their scenes. And it's pretty cool to check out. But I think definitely, I mean, as people grow older and are drawing on traditions as far as music from the past, I think definitely you get like that certain spirit where people may find more creativity and meaning in it. And then also if the game is oversaturated, you just have so many more people trying to become
yeah.
rappers for maybe not the right reasons, then they don't necessarily have that same like intention.
Well, you mentioned London, and England is the home of grime.
Yeah.
And I don't like if someone asked me to describe grime, I'd be like, I don't know. So like, but what are your thoughts on like you're like Stormzy and I'm blanking, but like the other guys like the kings of grime.
I mean, I think with rappers like that, I think it's really cool because it's a very homegrown sound, and that's something that I'm passionate about. Like a lot of the artists I mentioned are West Coast artists, and I like that those people sound like they come from where they come from. I like that rappers from New York, especially old school rappers, sound like New York rappers. I think that's cool. It reflects the environment where they're from. So I think that with grime, like it doesn't sound like anything that would come out of America. Even when in
No,
London they're making like drill music that has its region, like roots in Chicago. They put their own spin on it as far as some of the electronic instruments they have and some of the um, electronic dance music, some stuff that came from that they're making there and incorporated into their rap sound. I think it's dope, and I think it's cool to see that they're being successful within their market and also taking their sound past their own borders. And I think it's dope.
what I also feel like is if you really listen to the music like from these guys that are English, is that you can hear only a little bit. You can hear their accents in it.
Yeah,
So like, which is exactly what you're talking about, like reflecting where they're from. They're from London.
yeah,
So like, of course, it sounds like rap, but at the same time, you can hear like English, maybe a little Jamaican because their families might be from the Caribbean going on there. So like, you can tell just by listening that they're not American.
yeah,
Like, and you don't need to be like an expert.
yeah,
You just gotta be like, huh, that's not the same.
yeah. And you notice that you pick up on those things.
Yeah. Do you also feel like in because like in Israel, rap's gotten big. Like the underground rap scene's gotten pretty big in Israel. Do people know who you are in Israel?
Some people do. I'm working on some stuff right now with some artists that definitely just stay tuned for it, and I'm gonna be posting about it. But there's a huge underground scene, and it's cool to see like certain people will reach out and be like, "Hey, I heard that you rap in English and also in Hebrew, and also like I've heard you rap a little bit in Russian because sometimes I'll throw a couple words in there."
You've done
And I'll
Spanish
say,
too.
yeah, Spanish too. I think it's interesting. It's cool to hear sounds from different places, but that are also based here. So I've had people reach out to me who are familiar with my music. I've had a couple artists who I really appreciate. Hit me up and follow me. So hopefully I'll be able to work with them, one day. So
If you
that's
had
exciting.
if you had to recommend like one or two people or groups in the Israeli music scene, who would you recommend? Just for
Okay.
anyone.
Any kind of Israeli music or specifically
No, no,
rap
in rap,
and rap?
R
Okay.
and B, that kind of mixture, because that's how Israel works.
So the first one is this rapper. Her name's Eden Derso. She's dope. Like
Okay, Eden
she's
Derso.
probably my favorite Israeli rapper, like hands down. Um, so hopefully I'll get a collab one day. We'll see down the road. And then I'd say another person who's kind of just legendary that everyone listens to is Nechi Nech.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know, he's been around for a while, and every single time I've been in Israel, people are like, "Yo, did you like rapping? You should listen to Nechi Nech." And like, super talented, definitely does his own thing as far as working on different genres and different sounds, and also represents where he's from in Petah Tikva, which I think is dope to hear how he incorporates all those sounds.
What about so? I mean, like we talked about this earlier. What about the rapper Nissan Black, who is also a black and Jewish rapper?
Oh,
Well, and but his what I find is so interesting about him, for those who don't know, he's black and Jewish, but he's like from Seattle. He had a crazy upbringing, and somehow he got to Israel, and he's an Orthodox Jew in Israel. His following is Orthodox Jews, though, which is like when you think about Orthodox Jews, like the last thing you think about is rap music. But somehow he's cultivated, probably because of of relatability, a support group of religious Israeli Jews. So
yeah.
how do you think that happened?
I mean, to be honest, first of all, he's just a super talented
Yeah,
musician.
he's a great rapper.
I think hands down, that's like the first thing I was able to actually perform. We talked a little bit about it at a virtual Yom HaAtzmaut celebration this past May with him, and like he was really easy to work with. Like when we're doing all the things leading up to it, he's just a genuinely like nice person and definitely relatable, very like respectful of everyone's time, and really about like putting on a great performance and really showcasing his talent. So I think that's the first thing, and I think the second part is just it comes from that authenticity. Like if you're authentic with your music, people are going to respect it. And people, will want to throw their opinions about everything that you have to do and have to say. So it's not like it's going to be everything's perfect, but if people can recognize authenticity, and I think with him, he's like a genuinely talented artist and also authentic about his experience and has lots of like videos, short like documentaries and stuff where he talks about his own experiences and how they play into his rap music and also his visuals for his songs and the stories that he tells through those, I think are super cool. And people respect that it's creative, it's something unique, and it's authentic to his experience. So I think that that's like a key and why so many people will flock to it, even if it's not something they traditionally would associate and put together.
I mean, no one. This is just like my introspective take, I guess. But I also feel like with him being a Black American and his fan base being primarily just Israeli religious Jews, I feel like that's an area where just because most religious Jews in Israel are just you have like are white European ancestry, I feel like he's breaking down barriers, whether intentionally or not. He's breaking down barriers there between like Black Americans, uh, Black people, and religious Jews. Do you also kind of see that?
Yeah, I think definitely I could see that. I could see especially even that video Motherland Bounce. That's probably like my favorite one. Still, I listen to it. Listen to it with my family.
That song's so
Um, yeah, it was fire, and the video was dope too. It
yeah.
shows
You
like
gotta watch the video
in
too.
New York. They're in New York where there's been so much tension recently, especially as far as tension between Black and Jewish communities in New York, and to see a video kind of bring that together and break down those barriers, I think is really important. And I definitely see like music definitely plays a role in that.
All right, so let's talk about your music then. Do you because every song I've listened to has a message in it. Do you when you're writing a song, do you like pinpoint what your message is? You're like, I want to, it to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say to a certain extent, yeah, I don't necessarily do it in a formal process. A lot of times my process will be I'll have an idea for a song, a topic, maybe a couple lyrics, something to start off with. And then I guess in my mind, I can kind of imagine like what kind of tempo that rap is going to go to. So then I'll go make a beat for that, and try to have the beat reflect whatever the mood of the song will be. So I mean, it could be like a positive, negative, regular, serious message. It could be a song where I want the message to be like, I grew up mostly in San Diego, and I want you guys to hear that and feel that in this song. So I'll make a song like Lowrider or like Westside, um, so you can kind of relate, so the listener can relate to that. And then after I make the beat and I have the basic idea for the structure and the lyrics, then I'll go and finish writing it in and then record it. The other side of it is it could be something that's not necessarily positive. So I had the idea for my song Stereotypes. I didn't know exactly how the beat was going to sound. I actually wrote most of that song before I ever made a beat, which isn't necessarily my normal process. But that song is all about stereotypes that are put on me being black and being Jewish, and trying to take sort of a satirical approach to it and say, look, like, listen to all these ridiculous stereotypes people say about people like me, and then try to imagine me actually embodying all of those. And it just sounds like a ridiculous, outlandish idea. And sort of end the song on the note that if I was all these stereotypes, I couldn't even exist because they contradict each other so much. Um, so with that, I had a very clear message. I knew exactly like how I wanted to say it. What I wanted to say was just a process of writing the words, and then creating the beat, making sure it all fit together right.
Well, so in your song Benjamin's Baby, which that seemed that that was a response to anti-Semitism in America. However, specifically Ilhan Omar's tweet, the congressman, congresswoman who tweeted, "It's all about the Benjamins." Baby, you said, "My loyalty is to my brethren, baby, because I'm living in a world where everyone hates me." Is
Yeah,
that is that something you kind of experience? Is that like something you feel as a, being black and Jewish?
I think definitely that came from a place because for the most part, that song is also like satirical, and in the music video, I have that sort of thing, the definition of satire at the
Yeah.
beginning. Um, but certain parts of it definitely draw from personal experiences and my delivery, especially certain lyrics I emphasize, kind of poking fun at those stereotypes. But that part of it, I think, definitely comes from, I was raised black and Jewish, and I talked about these positive aspects of it, of knowing that I'm capable of overcoming all sorts of difficulties and obstacles that my people have gone through. But also, part of that was from a young age. I knew that I'd have to deal with racism. I knew that for nothing, for no reason, before even getting to know me, people would judge me and would hate me for being Jewish and for being black. When I was a little kid, I experienced it. So definitely that part I think is exaggerated. I don't think everyone hates me in the world. But at the same time, it's to try and show like, yeah, I do have loyalties to the people who are nearest to me, who are closest to me, and who have my back because I'm living in an environment where, since from a young age, I've faced hatred for that specific aspect of my identity. And to attack someone for finding community within members of whatever groups they're a part of is ridiculous on top of it. And it's you know, it's anti-Semitic to be honest. And really what I was trying to do with that song was highlight how, Ilhan Omar says this trope about Benjamin's baby, and it's damaging because it has the idea of dual loyalties and money. But on top of that, politicians from all across the spectrum have said that. I mean, Donald Trump told a group of Jewish people, Jewish constituents who would be voting and potential donors that they wouldn't want Donald Trump to win because he didn't want their money and because he said that the Jews would want to control their politicians. And that's the exact same trope. And hearing people who claim that they care about our communities, who claim to want to represent us in the government as part of the American population, say stuff like that, really takes me back to things that I learned since I was a little kid about the fact that people are gonna have stereotypes and hatred towards you or towards me for no reason at all before they even meet you. And the people who are there to actually elevate me were my family members, members of my community. So absolutely, I have loyalty to them. But it shouldn't be something that's penalized and looked at through that anti-Semitic trope of like dual loyalties.
That's sure. I agree with what you're saying about the politicians, because the thing about Ilhan Omar's tweet, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," is that it was a little more on the nose, but you hear through subtlety, you hear like racist and anti-Semitic comments from our own government often. You just
Yeah,
got to be looking for it,
right.
essentially. In another song, this is one of your more original songs, Black Band. You said it's by design that people be sensitized, and
Oh yeah, I said
that one was like, oh, it's so true.
yeah. For that one, it was it's by design. Are people desensitized?
Okay,
So
I messed that up.
that's okay. Yeah, so that one, but yeah, that it's like the same sort of it's talking about that sort of same issue, like what you were saying about I think my next lyric was it's honestly difficult not to be. All we see on TV is negative lies about us.
It's by design, our people desensitized. It's honestly difficult not to be. All we see on TV's negative lies about us.
So really, it's about how our people are desensitized. Black Americans were desensitized to seeing violence against us because that's constantly what we see on TV. That's constantly what we see when we open social media, and it's gotten to the point where even blatant violations of Black people's humanity, people try and defend the people who are perpetrating that sort of violence. That's how normalized it's gotten to be, and it's gotten to be. We've become so desensitized to it that we even engage people as if it's a legitimate debate to try and explain our humanity. That's not even a legitimate debate. It's not even a legitimate starting place to start that conversation. And the fact that we even have to have that conversation is troubling.
Very, very relevant. It's interesting that you talk about it from that side. When I heard it, obviously I can only think about it from my side, and I was just thinking about how we see, black people, unarmed black people, be killed by police, and all just a whole gamut of stuff on TV, and like we don't even really think twice about it. Like this is my experience, of course, and so like the sensitization was going the other way, where it's like
Yeah,
we're so used to it, where it's like, but of course, if that was a white person, there'd be a little more outrage about it.
yeah. I mean, definitely, I think there's something to that, to the way that outrage is selectively placed and when certain people's humanity is violated, and I think that reflects on how much people actually view certain groups of people, specifically Black Americans in this case, as human within the American context.
Certain people expect, black people to think one way, Jews to think one way, kind of like a group is a monolith.
Hmm.
Have you also experienced that from either side? Because obviously intersecting identities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes kind of with like some stereotypes I was talking about earlier. I mean, I've definitely been in situations where people will say like, "Oh, wow, like you're nicer than I thought," because I thought that you would be like not a nice person because and a bunch of dog whistles about being black, and also because you wear baggy clothes and have like earrings. So I've had people say stuff like that because they assign certain traits and certain appearances with certain values. Um, and sort of vice versa. I mean, I've also experienced a lot of it from outside of the Black and Jewish communities. I've had a lot of people who are not Black or Jewish come and try to tell me that because I'm Black, I shouldn't be able to have this connection to Israel that I have, and it doesn't make sense, and try to sort of exploit that element of my identity, which, first of all, is historically inaccurate if you look at the history of Zionism, also within the Black non-Jewish community. But also, for me, is an element of appropriation of people trying to take the Black experience and categorize it into a box that will work for them to be politically expedient.
So, because like you were the correct me if I'm wrong here, the president of Hillel at GW.
I was the president of GW for Israel. I was very involved in Hillel also.
I knew I was getting it wrong as I said it. So did you also feel like, and this is just like I can't relate to the anti-Semitism on college campus. I went to a Midwestern college. There just wasn't. I didn't experience it there. But however, you have. So do you feel so being like a face to Jewish life at George Washington University? The people kind of attack you because like they're sitting here and they're saying you be the president of GW for Israel, and they're like he must think a certain way.
I mean, definitely, I had actually after I released my song Diaspora, I had a really interesting interaction with a really passive aggressive person who stopped me on the street and started questioning me about a bunch of stuff. He was like, "Oh, I saw your video. I really liked it," like trying to be sarcastic. And I was just like, "Oh, cool, thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate that you watched the video to begin with." And then he started questioning me about um, trying to make it like make me feel as if because I'm a Zionist and proud of my Jewish homeland, that makes me less black. But he wasn't black. So for me, I was like, I'm not going to listen to you. You have no authority to try and speak for my people. And it was kind of a ridiculous conversation. Everything that he said to try and like annoy me was kind of ridiculous. He started asking about if I liked going to Jerusalem. So I was like, yeah, of course I love going to Jerusalem. It's in the homeland. There's so much history of my people there. Started trying to ask me questions about uh, assuming that I had certain beliefs about other people who live here. And because in my song I'm talking about being proud of being Jewish, that means I must hate Arabs, which I didn't say in the song. So
It never came up.
grasping at straws. So I think, I mean, for me, how I interpret that is sort of an all lives mattering of my Zionism. I think it's every time that Black people or Jewish people or anyone who's experienced marginalization expresses pride in their identity, pride that so many people try to squash, it gets characterized as them being hateful because in their minds, it's us fighting back against a system that's designed to keep us disenfranchised. So by me being proud of being Jewish and being proud of being Black and being vocal and being a public face of both on campus, I think it really aggravates people who want to just put us in a box and portray us a certain way that makes it easier for them to maintain control of our narratives.
That's really well said. I mean, I also, it's kind of like you talked about. It's like a lot of times when any marginalized group tries to defend themselves, right now the most noticeable one be Black Lives Matter. It's like for other people, it creates like an us versus them mentality.
Right.
Like something psychologically doesn't click for them, and they're like, they're against us,
Yeah.
and not at all the case. But that's just like our reaction to it. So you recently spoke to the Israeli Knesset, which is like, I guess, our American Congress,
Yeah.
about anti-Semitism on college campuses. So tell me about that. How did that happen? Yeah, just kind of give me some details on that.
Yeah, so I mean, because I was so involved on campus, I was able to work with a lot of different organizations. Specifically, I'll talk about Stand With Us. They're also one of the first to repost my music video Diaspora after I first released it, which was really cool because it was a sort of intersection of my passions, as being music, being activism for my people. So Stand With Us is an amazing organization, and I've been in contact with them, and I was actually reached out to see if I wanted to participate in this panel where students would be speaking to a Knesset committee about this specific topic being anti-Semitism on college campuses. Since I was in Israel, I was able to actually go and join in person. So it was, I mean, really an amazing, and I felt very honored to have that experience to go there and speak before people who are making change and who actually are taking the time to hear the stories of Jewish people and the Jewish diaspora and our experience and do what they can to make the situation better for us. So I talked a little bit about my experiences on my college campus throughout the years, talked a little bit about specifically relating how anti-Semitism is manifesting itself in the time of the pandemic. There are a few issues on GW's campus where Jewish students and Zionist students were being blamed for spreading coronavirus after having attended the APAC policy conference, which again goes back to a really terrible trope. So I talked about that experience and about that whole situation on our campus. And then right there was also Michael Dixon, who, is actually the one who really afforded me this opportunity. So I'm very thankful to him. And he spoke about issues of American students on college campuses, specifically that at San Francisco State University, they tried to bring Layla Khaled, the actual terrorist, to speak via Zoom. Luckily, it didn't end up working because Zoom refuses to provide its platform for use of convicted terrorists. So once it was brought to their attention, they canceled that and then sort of spiraled and all the other social media streaming services canceled it. But really talking about that troubling situation and expressing how we personally on American college campuses as members of the Jewish diaspora experience anti-Semitism.
I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, but why do you think that anti-Semitism often gets swept under the rug? So just to give you an example, like Deshaun Jackson, the NFL player, he makes an anti-Semitic Instagram post, I want to say, right? And it's like, I don't think he should have been fired, but I still think there should have been like some repercussions. And it really just seemed like there was a slap on the wrist.
Mhm.
So why do you? Because I can't figure out why. Why do you feel like anti-Semitism is often just getting pushed aside?
That's a really hard question to answer. I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the repercussions for Deshaun Jackson. I
They
hope
weren't
that he's
any.
grown as a person. But yeah, like I think that that's posted like a was supposed to have been a Hitler quote. It was blatantly anti-Semitic. So I hope that there would have been some sort of consequence. Also, I hope that he's grown as a person and doesn't hold those types of beliefs. Um, but I mean, I think that a large part of it goes to a lot of people don't actually are not educated, don't actually understand the sorts of things that Jewish people go through. And also, I think part of it goes back to that defensive mechanism we talked about earlier, that when we speak about oppression we face, people get uncomfortable because it doesn't come from just one place on the political spectrum. So I feel like everyone who's not an active ally of the Jewish community, and not everyone, but a lot of people who aren't active allies of the Jewish community sort of interpret any time you speak about anti-Semitism as like a personal attack and get defensive about it because we can talk about anti-Semitism, and if you're talking about anything that's not right-wing anti-Semitism, someone who's left-wing politically will feel like, oh, that can't happen because I don't want to be labeled as anti-Semitic because of my political affiliation, and vice versa. You have all these people who claim to support Jews who are right-wing politically, but they'll ignore it from their own camps because they only see anti-Semitism as something they can use to weaponize to attack other political parties and try to get Jewish support. And I think that until we as people demand more, I don't know how much is going to change. But that also is a whole other issue because it shouldn't necessarily be on a victim of a crime, of a hate crime, of hatred, to be forced to educate a perpetrator.
I also feel like it's problem. Just to add to that, I think it's also problematic because it's like so as we're finding often is like an anti-Semitic comment comes from like a celebrity, right? And then they like come and then like Jews are like, hey, that was anti-Semitic. Like we should talk about this. And then it's like, and now it's like our fault for talking about it, for being like,
Yeah,
so like we're victim shamed in a couple ways. Or one it's like, it's not a big issue, but then like we raise it as an issue because it is. And
yeah,
and then it's like yes, but you can see why Jews control the media because they're raising it as an issue.
yeah. I saw some of that happen with Nick Cannon and also Deshaun Jackson. And
Yeah,
Nick
Nick
Cannon
Cannon.
has done a lot to
I'm
educate himself and participate in these
yeah,
conversations.
I'm in the same boat where I genuinely think Nick Cannon actually like took all the right steps to kind of be like I made a mistake. I'm gonna fix
Yeah,
it. I later on found out I don't know if you noticed that he has Jewish ancestry. He said his either grandfather or great grandfather is Jewish.
wow.
I need to Google that again and double back on that, which obviously changes things for him. But I mean, I don't, what I find so odd about anti-Semitism is that the tropes are so old.
Yeah,
Like none of them are new and they don't go away.
it's the same tropes that have gone back. Some in some cases like 2,000 years since Romans.
These are the same tropes that are being pushed in like Europe.
Yeah,
Like when we were living in like ghettos, like when we were like confined to our own neighborhoods.
it's insane.
And I don't understand how they stick around so much.
I don't know if there's, to be honest, like I'm trying to think of examples of the exact same tropes that translate internationally, and it's very hard to think about. Like even certain people try to masquerade it certain ways. So nowadays people say it's not anti-Semitism, it's only anti-Zionism, which is anti-Semitic in my opinion. And based on the definition, if you're saying that Jewish people don't have the right to self-determination in our indigenous homeland, then you're literally denying people human rights as defined
Yep.
pretty much everywhere around the world. But even if you go back even further, this whole idea of anti-Zionism comes from the Soviet Union, literally from leaders who have the blood of who knows how many Jews on their hands. And trying to separate that and try to disguise it as something new is ridiculous. And it's even crazy to think that an ideology that was coined between like 50 to 60 years ago in a state that no longer exists has somehow become so prevalent is insane.
It's like it's insane. It's just like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of beyond understanding at a certain point. For me, at least, I feel like it's beyond understanding because I just sit here and I also and like I can only imagine. Like, I don't know why these tropes hold up. I try to. I in general, I want when I see anti-Semitic or racist concepts, I try to see, well, where did they come from? In this case, they came from Europe, as they normally come from Europe anyway. And I'm flabbergasted, honestly. I can't. It's so beyond me how they stick around,
Yeah,
and then they die off, and then they come back.
time and time again.
And I feel like, and I don't talk about this often, but I feel like the real problem is that in America, even in America, right, where it's like, as Jews, we live like relatively comfortable lives, and like we're very very assimilated, you know,
Yeah,
compared to any time in history. We're probably the most assimilated, and there's still a fear, not a fear of me, but there's still like the idea that like it could get bad again.
yeah,
Like you never know, but a slippery, but it's all it takes is a slippery slope.
yeah. And it always turns bad really fast, and people don't necessarily expect it to happen. Not that they should, because it happens so fast.
Yeah, because I mean, Mark Maron, the comedian, talked about it. He's a Jewish comedian, and he talked about it in a way where it's like, why are all these Jewish writers writing all these movies? And he jokes about it, but there's a point there. And he says the reason why is because the thought process is, okay, what do we make for everyone else so they don't hate us? You know? And he jokes, but you're kind of like, ooh, it sits with you.
Yeah,
Like it's not wrong.
I mean that's even if you think about like certain occupations. I mean, for me, I know mostly from Soviet and Russian history just because of that side of my family. But there's so many Jewish musicians who played the violin in conservatories because that was what was available to them. And that was one way that they can guarantee that they're going to be able to have a profession and something that's also valued and permitted by the government, by the ruling party. And I think that, that joke you just said also like connected those dots to me.
Thank you for watching Bothering Strangers. My guest today has been rapper Westside Gravy. Anything the audience should know about your music?
Yeah, check it out. WestsideGravy.com. I just dropped a new song called Westside Worldwide. Super interesting beat, incorporating some of these Middle Eastern sounds and really representing all the places that I've been, telling my story on that end. And then I got some new music coming out soon. You might catch a couple verses in Hebrew, so stay tuned.
And that's all. And all that music is available on all streaming platforms.
Yep, all streaming platforms, most social media. Catch me just Westside Gravy.
WestsideGravy.com, if you want all the information, has everything you need on there. It's where I did a lot of my research, actually. So you know it's good. All right. Thanks for watching. Thank you to my guest, Noah Shuftinsky, otherwise known as Westside Gravy. Appreciate it. Stay safe out there in Israel.
Thank you for having me.